Hey there, and welcome to today's video. For today's video, we have quite a long one. So for today, we are going to be building a TV station. Now before we get started, I'm gonna preface this by saying I do not know anything about TV stations or the terminology or anything that goes on inside of it. This is all based on pictures that I saw here and there and my guesstimation of what would be required based on other office buildings. So, this whole build was actually inspired by a news van that I saw in the debug menu. It was close to the end of the menu, so it was something that I don't believe I had seen or paid much attention to before. But I figured, what if we could get enough base game items to try to make this work? And a lot of it is, again, guesstimation of what would be required in an office and using a lot of imagination for certain items. Something in particular that I did a lot was create desks with countertops, which there wouldn't be a big issue with that if it wasn't for the fact that it needs a higher chair. So, what I decided to do for this one was use the high chairs but make it as if those would be either an ergonomic desk or more of a high desk in general with a high chair that you could just get off of and work on your desk standing up. So that is one of the big imaginative pieces that we're going to roll with here. Now, besides that, there was something that I found out as I was going along with this. It seems like news stations aren't exactly a typical thing. It seems like they are amalgamated along with a TV station and a whole bunch of different things are recorded in the same place. Again, I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, so if there's something that I got wrong, which is probably a lot, well, this is what I rolled with. So I originally wanted to make it just be a news station, but it evolved a bit into a TV station. So in the recording area, there ended up being a space for news broadcasting, then a space with a green screen, which I'm pretty sure they use those for the news anyways when they're doing the weather forecasts. And the third area that was in the recording space was more just like a stage with a TV in the background. Now, a lot of TVs I use as if they were maybe a projector or maybe one of those really gigantic TVs. It really depends on what you're trying to look at, since there's a boardroom that I made as well. But that one, we don't have any whiteboards or anything like that in base game, so that one is a bit more of a flex one that's like, if you needed it as a board, you could use it as a board. If not, you could use it as a TV. Now, when we first started the build, there was already a whole bunch of items out there, and that's because going through debug takes a lot of time, and that is a lot of time. So by cutting out a lot of the times that I was in debug, that was probably an hour of the build that was cut out. So it's not that I was doing a lot of building in the middle or anything like that. I specifically went digging through debug and put a whole bunch of items out there. So by the end, I believe I remembered to take everything off. There were some very small things like pens that I found, but I'm pretty sure I used all of them regardless. Now, for the build itself, when I first started, I wanted to originally make an underground parking lot, and I tried playing around with terrain tools and whatnot, but I quickly figured out that that wasn't really going to work out, since I also wanted to have garage doors leading to the basement. So neither one of those would really work out. Technically, you could make it be a bit of a jump, have some garage doors on the outside, and all of a sudden have the cars downstairs, but I really wanted the inclination if I was going to do that anyways. So what I did instead was I made a first level parking garage, and there's actually two after all. So the first one is where the news vans are parked, and a couple spaces in the front as well. And the second parking garage is, let's say, an employee one. Would probably be more reserved for executives, since there aren't many parking spots as it is. But I did take care and add a bus stop in front of the building as well. So there were quite a few items that I found that actually were very good for what would be this type of building. So there were some billboards, for example, that I was able to put up, And granted, they were a bit cheaty in the way that I put them, but I wanted this to be an area where it was like there was a lot of advertising going on, there was a lot of movies that were being filmed, stuff like that. Though there isn't exactly a big open filming area for it to produce movies, but we can use our imagination on that one once again. So the layout of the building itself was that parking garage on the first floor, and along with that there's a main reception area which they have their own employee room, their own bathrooms, even a mail room. And then once you get upstairs, this would be the main employee area, I would say. So this is where there's a huge open concept office space. So I didn't want to make individual offices a thing so much because of space, as well as just because of what I would expect this type of environment would be. I think it would be pretty chaotic in my own opinion. But I did make two big boardrooms and then two smaller ones and one that's more like a one-on-one room. The only enclosed actual office would be what we would call here the big boss. And the rest of them, I think there were five open areas. So these five, they all end up with like a little flag that would designate maybe this is accounting and that's finance. And I don't know what else they would have besides maybe marketing, advertising, research. Who knows? The next level up is what is actually the recording area. Now, a big issue with this one was I wanted to have it on both the second and the third level, but from what I know, these spaces can't be next to windows. And something that is for some reason very common in a lot of the pictures that I was seeing was that these buildings were full of windows. So to me, that indicated that the recording area would actually have to be indoors, so completely blocked off from any windows. So what I ended up doing to get a bit around that was I have the recording area just in the middle, and from the recording area you get to some spaces. So I believe they're called green rooms, but I made one red, one yellow, and one blue. I didn't want to specifically make it green, though I know you don't have to make it green, it's just the way it's called. Again, I believe that's the way it's called at least. Don't judge me on the terminology. But I also made an area to get refreshments, whether that would be like a quick coffee or you need waters in the middle of the recording or whatever it is. Ideally, there would be food there as well, but since there is a kitchen upstairs, I figured it wasn't really worth it to put some fake dishes there already. The other space you can get to from here is actually more of a storage space. So for this one, it's a bit funny. There aren't any actual cameras like you would get in, I think it's Get Famous, for example. That would have been great for this type of area. But I wanted to make this completely base game. So what I did was I actually put, I believe they were leaf blowers and security cameras. So those would be your handhelds. And then I just put a whole bunch of cameras in there, some tablets, some, I believe they're called designer tablets, something like that. So they're just, one is a bit bigger than the other. And on the other side of the recording studio, so the rest of the windows, I basically made a giant prop area, which I would have liked to have mannequins and stuff like that, which I think those are also available. I can't remember exactly in which pack, probably in Get to Work. They actually have some mannequins that you can put clothes on, but we don't have that here. So, since we only have base game, I used some busts, for example, and I used just random clutter items that I could find that would be like, maybe they would use this in a recording, who knows? So the last floor is the very top floor, where I ended up putting the cafeteria. I wanted to put a type of lunch area or eating space in the second floor along with the rest of the employee area, but it wasn't really going to fit. It was going to make it be. I could have made it fit, but I believe it would have been better to just keep it the way it was with a lot of employee seating areas, since I don't believe this would be a space where you would only have like 8 Sims working. This would be a space where you would probably have even more than what I already put in there. So I ended up putting the cafeteria all the way on the top floor, and I imagined this being one of those very fancy employee buildings where they would have catered meals, for example, or even where it could be somewhere that you could make your own meal. But I ended up putting microwaves there as well, just so Sims would be able to have their own lunches and all that. So if I had yet another floor that I could build on, I probably would have even put a gym. It would have been one of those decked out office buildings that you would probably see somewhere in a big city. For me, the reference would be downtown Toronto, which I do know there are buildings that are like this. Along with the cafeteria, there was also roof access. So this area would be basically where a lot of the maintenance stuff is. So where you would have your ACs and stuff like that. But it was also where I attempted to make some antennas. Now, there were some electrical towers that I used, and there was also I believe it's just a satellite from the spy career. So I tried to use those, but there was only so high that I could take it. Besides that, the only other thing that I decided to add here was actually some ladders to go all the way downstairs. I wanted to make kind of like a fire escape since this is a really tall building, but I don't actually have the pack that I would have wanted to use for that. I can't remember which pack it is, but there is one that is fully metal stairs. That is the one that I would have wanted to make this work, and since I didn't have it, I figured might as well just leave it the way that it was and use the ladders. So we are getting close to the end of this video. As I mentioned, it is quite a long one, but I do want to know what you think of this one down below. It's listed as a generic lot, so it doesn't actually have a particular community lot status, but I actually think it quite fits it since it's not quite something that I wanted to list as a library or a museum, though if you add a couple items, it is possible. So thank you so much for watching today's video. Let me know what you think down below. Let me know what you'd like me to try out next, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a great weekend!